Bill Press is one of our nation's best-known liberal commentators. He's host of the nationally syndicated Bill Press Show. He is a columnist whose work appears in a number of publications, including The Hill, thehill.com, and he joins us now. Bill, thanks. Oh, and he is also, by the way, the author of an upcoming book entitled From the Left. So first of all, Bill, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Good to see you, RJ. Yeah, and there's so much going on, like nothing to talk about, right?
Well, nothing at all. You know, although here's a good place to start. I never want to let John Kelly off the hook, at least not till he's gone. And so I was delighted to see that you wrote a column recently with the, we don't always write our own headlines, of course, but with the very pointed title, John Kelly Must Go. And it starts out, you start out by pointing out that the Trump White House has had its share of screw-ups, certainly not a controversial observation, but the Rob Porter mess is the worst yet. Gee, how can you tell, Bill?
No, yeah. Well, I'll tell you why I say that, because this one is entirely self-inflicted. I think it's interesting that Donald Trump has not tried to blame this one on Hillary Clinton or Senate Democrats or fake news. I mean, this is again all self-contained within the White House, and I don't think anybody looks good. I mean, certainly the White House counsel, Don McGahn, doesn't look good. Hope Hicks doesn't look good. I mean, she's dating the guy, and then she, helps write the defense of him. That was the first statement that came out from John Kelly. Donald Trump doesn't look good. I mean, he always believes the men, never the women. Took him a whole week before he even said, "Oh yeah, of course I don't endorse domestic violence." What took him so long? But the one who really looks bad, I think, is John Kelly. I mean, John Kelly has lied about when he knew about Rob Porter and the domestic violence charges, kept him on for 13 months on a temporary basis, and then he called together when the story broke, he called together the White House staff and told them to lie about when he found out about it and how fast he acted. And this isn't the first time, I'm sure you've talked about, that John Kelly's screwed things up. And I just think people believe, if you wear a general's outfit, uniform, and you've got the stars on your shoulder or on your hat, that you're omniscient and that you can do anything. And the fact is, I think a military uniform hides a lot of sins, certainly in the case of John Kelly. And Trump,
yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, Bill, because I have a friend who's 93 who served in World War II, in fact, was a radio broadcaster in Rome, in occupied Rome after the war. And he says, the reason why, that if you served in World War II, you knew that generals were full of blank, but that as fewer and fewer people have experience in military service, it was sort of tended to assume a sort of virtue and skill level to them that often doesn't play out in practice. I mean, we knew John Kelly was a bad human being if we had been paying attention to his tenure at Homeland Security, but I don't think any of us, certainly I was not aware of, first of all, how incompetent he was, and secondly, how ghastly his values were in terms of personal conduct as well. I don't know, am I being too harsh on the guy?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, this isn't the first time he's had a problem with women victims and standing up for the guilty party, not for the victims. In 2016, just before he went to Homeland Security, there was a Marine captain who was accused of court-martialed in court-martial hearing, accused of sexual abuse against two female soldiers who served under him. John Kelly appeared as a character witness for the Marine captain and testified that he was a superb officer, again, taking the side of the men against the women. So here, this Rob Porter thing is almost, maybe we should have expected it. I didn't know about that before from John Kelly. But remember, RJ, this is a guy, John Kelly, who said Robert E. Lee is one of his heroes. who said that we didn't have to fight the Civil War if only people would have been able to would have been willing to compromise on slavery. A guy who called the Dreamers lazy, and now he's out there defending Rob Porter and encouraging him to stay and fight these charges until the photo with the black eye came out, and then he suddenly had to change his tune. So, yeah,
And you
again,
know, Bill Press, for the 2 or 3 of our listeners who don't know the details of the Rob Porter scandal, we're talking about a guy who, and it was known all along, as it turns out, beat his wives, beat a girlfriend. There was testimony to this effect. If it weren't, I mean, I guess, you know, my takeaway with John Kelly is that if it weren't for the stars on his shoulders, he would be no better than the beer drinking loudmouth sitting on the step in some corner somewhere, making derogatory comments about women and offering offensive comments whose ignorance is only matched by their belligerence.
well said. And now let's remember who he works for, right? He works for a guy who was accused of sexual assault and sexual harassment by 20 different women, has called them all liars, insists that nothing happened. He denies it. And what was Donald? Of course, I'm talking about the president. What was Donald Trump's first reaction to Rob Porter? He told reporters, "Remember, he says he's innocent. You've got to remember that." So right away, you know, Kelly and Trump, they're singing from the same songbook when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault, which is the women are all liars and the men did nothing because they said they did nothing, which of course was also Donald Trump's defense of Roy Moore. So it's all of a package with the two of them.
Okay, so here's my frustration, Bill Press, and I don't know if you do psychiatric counseling on the side, but here's the frustration that I deal with every day is that I want to have a great debate about the issues. I want to force those Democrats to confront the economic challenges that some of them might want to avoid. I want to really get down in the weeds and talk about how we provide everyone with health care. But we act, or you name the issue, I want to talk about it, Wall Street, breaking up the big banks, whatever it is, debate we need to have. Instead, we are literally dealing with a political party and a president that seems to enshrine all the darkest aspects of human nature and exalt them. And instead, we're having to talk about, you know, as you mentioned, what the president actually said, if I recall correctly, was, "I'm against physical violence against women." As if we're actually at a state in American history in the 21st century where the president had to clear up whether he was for or against physical violence. How do we deal with the madness of these people and the perversity of these people, and at the same time have the kind of policy debates that I wish we were having?
Well, my first quick answer would be, and I don't mean to be a smartass here, is
Oh, go ahead.
no, we need a better class of people representing us. We got to throw some of these bums out, and that's why, you know, the resistance is great. I'm part of the resistance. Our revolution, all these groups that are out there, people are so pissed off. But you know, you got to follow through. We got to follow through in the midterms this year and get a lot of these guys out of office again. I think take back the House, take back the Senate, and then we will have a better dialogue with the Democrats in control of the Congress. But I think we got two things working against us, RJ. One is that Donald Trump has just dumbed down the entire American political system because he is the dumbest goof that ever walked into the White House. He has no idea about what any of these issues are all about, whether it's immigration or the economy, or, I mean, education, climate change. He can't. He's incapable of understanding or dealing with them, and he doesn't even try. You know, we're told he won't even do the daily security briefings that every president has done because he can't read, and he won't read more than a page if it's dumbed down. So that's one thing. And then you've got a Republican Party which has totally caved in, totally let themselves be overtaken by Trump. It's no longer the Republican Party; it's the Trump Party. So people that you might have expected that even Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan, I mean, who do know something about the issues, have let themselves be dragged down to the level of Donald Trump, and that's why, first of all, we're getting nothing done, and there is no real debate or dialogue about the important policy challenges facing this country.
Well, and I guess Bill, the one area where we might differ a little bit, I'm not sure, is that there's a part of me that believes that Donald Trump isn't a deviation. In fact, I've written this, that I don't think he's a deviation in the Republican Party. I think he's the id of the Republican Party. I think he says the things they don't want to say. And so I wonder now, and yet when I meet Republican senators, they tend to be very personally nice people. They're not the horrific bores that the President of the United States is, and so on. So I guess I'm struggling with that one too, to the extent to which they've compromised in order to go along with Donald Trump, and the extent to which he's kind of expressing the things that they feel in their hearts. And of course, you can't know what people feel in their hearts. But is it really a shift for the Republican Party, or is it just kind of the logical endpoint?
Well, put it this way, and I think this is where we do agree, is that Donald Trump didn't just like fall off a turnip truck, right? Or didn't just come from nowhere. Donald Trump is the end result of where the Republican Party has been going and letting itself be led, if you will. I would say since the days certainly of Newt Gingrich, certainly of the Tea Party, right? And they've been going more and more in this direction. When even a guy like John Boehner, who used to, I'm not defending him, but he used to be a deal maker. He was sort of a guy who wanted to get things done. Once the Tea Party took over, he let the Tea Party rule. Paul Ryan has let the Tea Party rule, and that led right into, there's no surprise, right, that Donald Trump was able to walk right into that party. And again, it's become so. I think it has become the party of Donald Trump. I would argue, RJ, and there used to be some voices who would counter that, right? And say, wait a minute, yeah, we got this extreme element, but that's not who we are. Well, that is who they are today. And when you got somebody like a Jeff Sessions as Attorney General of the United States, or Orrin Hatch, right, who was the first one to come out and defend Rob Porter, it's the least common denominator has taken over the party now officially, and the least common denominator is Donald Trump.
And they've made their choice and they're sticking with it. So I got to say, looking forward to 2018, to the elections, that is, since obviously we're already in the year. Even I know that. I guess I would say, again, going back to the tragedy of earlier this week in Parkland, even, I'm a troublemaker among Democrats, I'll admit it, but the worst Democrat is 1,000 times better on guns and protecting the lives of our children than virtually any Republican I can think of that's in office right now. Was a time it was not controversial the way it is now to decent gun control legislation. What does your gut tell you? We got a couple minutes left. What does your gut tell you about how the Democrats are going to do in November?
Oh, first of all, just quickly on the Parkland, Florida thing. I got to tell you, I was so pissed off watching Donald Trump. I mean, it was just disgusting. He goes out there, he actually said, addressing the children of America, don't worry, we will do everything we can to protect you. BS. He'll do nothing to protect America's children. He's at every chance. He's against every reasonable, responsible gun safety measure, including banning the sale of assault weapons like the AR-15 that was used in Florida. So it was just, and you're right. I mean, look, Marco Rubio came out and said, well, we don't want to do just stuff that makes you feel good. Well, a ban on assault weapons is not meant to make you feel good. It's meant to keep those weapons of war out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Marco Rubio, by the way, got $3.3 million from the NRA in the last couple of years. So you know where he's coming from. They own him lock, stock, and barrel. As far as 2018, I'm encouraged because we've seen little signs that there is, I believe, really a blue wave that is starting to sweep across this country. There are 36 so far state legislative seats that have been flipped from blue to, no, I'm sorry, from red to blue. And the most recent ones were in Wisconsin, in Iowa, in Missouri, and in Florida. That's a good sign. I think that there are good progressive candidates out there, and I'm a Bernie guy. I want everybody to be a Bernie, another Bernie, but at least they're good progressives. Candidates running for state legislature, for city council, for Congress, and for Senate. So I think Democrats have a maybe 60-40 chance of taking the House, and at least a 50-50 chance of taking the Senate. I think people have seen Donald Trump, they've seen the Trump party, and they're getting disgusted with it.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. And on the gun issue, I'm just going to say, you know what does make me feel good? Kids not dying makes me feel good. So, or as I always say, I'm not anti-gun, I'm pro-children. So, unfortunately, though, we're going to have to leave it there. Bill Press, columnist and author of the forthcoming book, From the Left. Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, there it is.
All
Okay.
right, good. Well, I look forward to reading it.